Okay, for those who aren't happy with just pictures, here is the video tour of the Scan New England Monitoring Ham Radio Headquarters, whatever you'd like to call it. This is the, of course, wide view of the whole shooting match, and we will zoom in and start along the bottom and back and forth here until we get in all the equipment on both sides. Actually, we're going to zoom right in here and start with the ham station. This is a couple different radios. We have a Motorola GTX, which is on loan from my friend Bob right now. It's a 900 megahertz 10-watt radio. I just installed it there today, as a matter of fact. Haven't even used it yet, but we'll try that later, I guess. Down here we have a Kenwood TS480SAT HF transceiver, and as you can see, this is just the remote head for the radio itself. The radio is mounted on the wall behind the shack. So a very small, compact radio that gets rave reviews. This is a Shure 555 microphone that goes with it, which also got rave reviews at EHAM, which is why it's sitting there on my desk. I was fortunate enough to get that for $25. Finally, to go with that is the KT100 auto tuner from LDG Electronics. It's built specifically for the TS480SAT, which has an internal antenna tuner, but this one does a much better job, and that's why it's sitting there. Now, to get to the monitoring station portion, we have the flagship of the fleet here, which is the AOR AR5000 receiver. Sitting on top of it is a Connect Systems Incorporated CD1 tone decoder that decodes CTCSS, DCS, and DTMF tones on any received signal. Above that, on one of the computer monitors, is the display from the SDR14 from RF Space, which I use as a wide spectrum display unit. The signals you see going down the screen right there are signals being received at this point over a 2 megahertz wide stretch, and the ones over here on the right are all the NOAA weather channels. This is the device itself, the SDR14, and that's interfaced with my main computer. I'll go along that row. Show you all the equipment on that shelf shortly. But that is all run in conjunction with the AR5000A receiver that you see here. To its right is the secondary receiver, which is the ICOM ICR8500. It also has a tone decoder on top of it. That's a CD2 model. And it also has this device, which is an ARD25, and what that does is decode APCO 25 digital. So I can actually listen to P25 communications on this wideband receiver. It is very nice to have a quality receiver for DX purposes that you can hear P25 on. Over to its right, we have the Uniden BCD 396XT, which I use for primary scanning in the shack. We also have a Motorola XTS 2500, the VHF model, 136 to 174. I use it for amateur radio, and I also use it for monitoring of analog and P25 stuff. To its right is an MTX 9250, which is a 900 megahertz portable, which I was using to try to get into the Marshfield repeater from here without too much success. Over to the right, we have a Samsung 22-inch 720p HD TV. Above that, we have an older LCD TV, which is now being used as a monitor screen for my closed-circuit cameras. And the closed-circuit cameras are controlled through this switch right here. As you can see, right now it's not scanning. Across this row, we have our convenient 24-hour clock, and we have our 3 computer monitors, which are tied into the main computer, so I can spread the screens out across, or spread windows out across 3 different screens, which is nice, very nice to have all that extra desktop space. Down here, it's not on right now, but we have our secondary computer monitor, and the computers are actually down here on the floor. That one's the secondary one right there. There's the primary. There's a subwoofer sitting in the middle, probably not too easy to see. And the computer keyboards are on shelves that slide out. Going up to the next row, we have a Uniden BC780XLT, which I use for auxiliary type of monitoring, civilian air, military air, and maritime. There's the SDR14 that we showed you before. Here we have the Uniden BC D796T, which I use for secondary stuff in the radio room, and that is the primary mobile scanner that goes in and out of the house with me as I travel in my truck. We have a voltage indicator here. Apparently there's a bigger demand for voltage today because of the hot weather outside. People running air conditioners, and my wife's running on dryer right now, so it's dropped down to 115 volts. Right here we have some vintage scanners. We have a Regency. We have a old Pro 2B, Patrolman Pro 2B. This was the very first receiver I ever owned back when I was a kid. This is not the same one, but it's a duplicate of what I had. My very first monitor receiver when I was about maybe 12 or 13 years old. A Uniden Bearcat 3, a Radio Shack Pro, so a Realistic Pro 77. Above it is an MFJ 269 antenna analyzer, which is a very handy device. A Uniden Bearcat 4, and another Patrolman Pro 77A, and another Bearcat 4. Also my work issued Motorola XTS 2500, which is an 800 megahertz version. All of these are functional and working, and I use to receive various things. Now we'll swing across the other way. This is the feed side of the house. Right here. Here you have your civilian air and your maritime receiving radios. This is the main receiving radio for the main feed, which is a Uniden BC D396T. We have the ICOM PCR 100, which is the remote controlled receiver. And we have an old Radio Shack Pro 2067, which is used for the Mass State Police Troop D feed. Here we have our various plugs, cable modems, switches for distributing our network. This is the thin client used for the auxiliary feeds, and the main computer that's used to supply our main feeds and the remote control receiver, etc. And that's pretty much it. That's a tour of the Scan New England headquarters, if you will. Hope you enjoyed it. And that's all. Cut.